Good morning. I'm attorney Ben Crump, along with attorney Lisa Park, attorney Eric Harris, Justin Preston, and Cliff Jones. We have the honor of representing the family of Nolan Wells. We have present with us his mother and father, Christine and Elmore.
Three things about this case still don't add up, and every one of them got more complicated this week. A sitting judge is now facing a petition to be removed from the bench over what she said about her own son. A video reportedly shows Nolan Wells arguing with someone on that boat hours before anyone last saw him. And the one person who might actually know what he was thinking in his final minutes has finally spoken, not directly, but through her family. None of that resolves what happened on Horn Island. If anything, it makes the picture messier. A boat pulls away from the island with a broken bilge pump and 4 friends aboard. It left with 5. The 5th was standing on that same beach less than 2 hours earlier, smiling in a photo, arms slung around the very group that would leave without him. Somewhere in that gap, something happened. Nobody involved agrees on what. 2 days later, he was pulled from the water, and the sheriff's office called it an accidental drowning before the autopsy was even finished. His family didn't believe that then. 3 weeks later, they still don't. And neither, it turns out, does almost anyone else looking closely at this case. This case involves the death of a teenager. We'll handle it carefully, but if that's not something you're up for today, take care of yourself first. That always comes before this. Welcome if you're new here. If you've been with us a while, thank you. Your shares and comments are the reason more people are learning about cases like this one. Subscribe if you haven't yet, and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Nolan Xavier Wells was 18 years old. He graduated from Ocean Springs High School in 2025, where he played wide receiver, and by that summer, he was on the roster at Southwest Mississippi Community College, gearing up to start training camp the week after the 4th of July. His high school coach, Jake Bramlett, put out a public statement after his death, describing Nolan as someone who carried himself with humility, treated people with respect, worked hard, and led by example. His father, Elmore Wansley, later told Good Morning America that his son was an elite athlete and said plainly that Nolan could swim. That detail matters more than it should have to, given what came next. Nolan wasn't a stranger to Horn Island either. According to his family, trips out there with friends were fairly common, a familiar stretch of federally protected coastline, undeveloped, no shelters, no cell service, reachable only by boat. This wasn't a first visit to unfamiliar terrain. It was a place he knew. The night before the trip, Nolan had dinner with his mother. She made salmon. He told her he loved her, hugged her, and left to spend the night with friends ahead of the holiday weekend. It was an ordinary goodbye. Nobody in that kitchen had any reason to think it was the last one. The next morning, July 4th, Nolan headed out with a group of friends for Horn Island to mark the holiday on the water, the same way countless families across the country were doing that weekend. Photos from that afternoon show him towering over his friends at 6'1", arm around their shoulders, smiling for the camera. Among that group was a young man named Warren, the son of a Mississippi judge, a detail that would matter a lot more in a few weeks than it did that day. There's a detail about those photos that became its own story entirely. In the images circulating from that trip, Nolan appears to be the only black person in the group. Ocean Springs, where the Wells family lives, is a town that's roughly 79% white by the latest census. That single fact, combined with everything that happened after, is a large part of why this case pulled in national attention as fast as it did. People looking at those photos and reading them through the lens of Mississippi's history. We're not going to tell you what conclusion to draw from that. We're telling you it's part of why this story spread the way it did, and it's worth understanding rather than ignoring. At some point in the afternoon, Nolan was seen talking with a young woman named Katie. According to a statement Warren's mother later posted publicly, Warren last saw Nolan around 3 o'clock that afternoon. Katie's mother, Gracie McCormick, would later confirm her daughter was the one with Nolan that day. What exactly was said between them is still one of the most disputed details in this entire case, and we'll get to that shortly. If you're finding this rundown useful, this is exactly the kind of case we dig into. Subscribe so you don't miss the next update, and tell us in the comments what you think actually happened on that island. By around 4:30 that afternoon, the boat was heading back to the mainland. According to the account Warren's mother later gave publicly, They left because the boat had started taking on water, a bilge pump issue. 4 friends made it back. Nolan wasn't with them. There's another detail that surfaced later, and it's one of the stranger threads in this case. Attorney Ben Crump, representing the Wells family, has said there's a video from that day showing Nolan in a heated exchange with someone on the boat, raised voices, an argument between him and another person present. Crump hasn't described it as physical, and nobody involved has fully explained what it was about. But it's real, it exists, and as of now, it's never been fully accounted for by anyone connected to the case. There's also the matter of a different video, the one that actually went viral first. For a while, many assumed it captured Nolan demanding his phone back from someone in the group. That assumption turned out to be wrong. A close friend has since said the voice on that recording is actually his own, not Nolan's. A correction that matters, because for days it shaped public perception of what tension on that boat may have looked like. Nolan's phone left the island with his friends. When his parents eventually got it back, reportedly before police did, the Snapchat content from that entire day had already been deleted, wiped before the standard 24-hour deletion window had even closed. Separately, there's a photo showing Nolan in blue swim trunks that day, which conflicts with an official report describing him as wearing black ones. Small detail, still unresolved. His family reported him missing that night, around 11 o'clock, after a phone call from one of his friends. The formal request for Coast Guard assistance didn't go out until roughly noon the next day, more than 13 hours later. The Jackson County Sheriff's Department coordinated with the Coast Guard and Mississippi's Department of Marine Resources, and volunteers with the United Cajun Navy joined the search of the island's rugged, tide-shifted coastline. Local residents familiar with the area have pointed out that the currents around Horn Island can shift quickly, with shallow points that make it genuinely difficult for even a strong swimmer to regain control once caught in them, a detail that doesn't prove anything on its own, but one investigators have had to weigh alongside everything else. On July 8th, as speculation built rapidly across social media, the sheriff's office issued a statement acknowledging the noise, saying investigators were working to establish the facts through eyewitness accounts, physical evidence, and other reliable information. Sheriff Ledbetter told a local news affiliate around that same time that solving this case was going to take a lot of hard work. 2 days after he went missing, on July 6th, a National Park Service agent found Nolan's body, face down in the water near the northwestern tip of Horn Island. Jackson County Coroner Bruce Lind said there were no immediate, obvious signs of foul play or trauma, but because of the uncertain circumstances, his office requested a full autopsy from the state medical examiner to determine whether foul play or trauma played any role. Around the same time, the sheriff's office put out a public statement that no foul play was suspected. Those 5 words would follow this case for weeks. Critics called the phrasing premature. Even the case's own outside consultants later noted it was a poor choice of words, one that implied more certainty than the evidence at that point actually supported. Nolan's family didn't accept the drowning explanation, at least not without more answers. On July 7th, they retained civil rights attorney Ben Crump, who has said he hasn't spoken directly with any of the young men who were on the boat, since all of them retained their own legal representation early on. 3 days later, at a press conference, Nolan's mother, Christine Wansley, said plainly that the rush toward an accidental drowning conclusion made both her and her husband uncomfortable. "I do absolutely respect law enforcement," she said, "but why are we so quick to rush to this?" The family requested an independent autopsy, flying Nolan's body to Washington, D.C., specifically so it could be examined by a doctor with no ties to Mississippi law enforcement. That same week, high-profile support started arriving. Reverend Al Sharpton stood alongside the family, calling for a full, transparent, and urgent investigation. Former NFL player Colin Kaepernick helped fund the independent autopsy. Filmmaker Tyler Perry stepped in to cover funeral costs, and director Spike Lee publicly voiced his support as well. A GoFundMe organized by a family friend has since raised well over its original goal to help cover funeral and memorial expenses. None of that answers what happened on the island, but it says something about how far this case has already traveled, beyond one county in Mississippi. A little over a week after Nolan's death, Judge Ashley Cole, Warren's mother, broke her own public silence. She deactivated her Facebook account after photos of her minor children started circulating online, and she came back specifically to address what she called rumors head-on. She confirmed she and her husband weren't on Horn Island that day, said no one in her family was trying to obstruct the investigation, and stated that Warren had been interviewed by the sheriff's department and cooperated fully. "Yes, I am a judge," she wrote, adding that she valued transparency and hadn't deleted her accounts for any hidden reason. She gave her own account of the timeline. Warren last saw Nolan around 3. The group left around 4:30 because of the boat trouble. What her statement didn't mention was the phone, the deleted messages, the keys, or the video Crump had described. She later said her family had received death threats over her son's connection to the case. If you're new to this channel and want to actually follow where this goes next, the interviews, the autopsy results, whatever comes out of that ethics complaint against the judge, subscribing is the easiest way to catch it the moment it happens. And if you've got a theory about what that boat argument was actually about, put it in the comments. We read them. For weeks, this case has hinged on one specific contradiction. According to Crump, the young woman Nolan was speaking with, Katie, told him she was heading back to the boat to rejoin the group. The friends say the opposite, that Nolan told them he wanted to stay behind with her. 2 accounts. Only one of them can be exactly right, and it's possible neither is complete. Katie herself has not given a direct, on-record interview to any outlet. What exists instead is her account, relayed secondhand by her family. According to a Facebook post from her sister, the friends were pressuring Nolan to end the conversation so he'd get on the boat with them, and based on that conversation, Katie assumed he was doing exactly that. She made it home safely that day on a different boat, picked up by her sister's brother-in-law. She assumed, reasonably, that the friends telling Nolan to get on board wouldn't have actually left him behind. Her mother, Gracie McCormick, added her own statement, confirming Katie was with Nolan that day, that Katie has stayed in contact with the Wells family since, and, critically, that Katie has no actual insight into what happened to Nolan after the 2 of them parted ways. That last point is worth sitting with. Katie's account, even filtered through her family, doesn't claim to know what happened next. It only describes what she believed was happening in the moment she last saw him. Neither of her family's statements supports the friend's version that Nolan chose, on his own, to stay behind. But neither statement is a sworn account either. It's 2 Facebook posts describing what a teenager told her family, weeks after a chaotic afternoon. Meaningful context, not a resolution. There's a version of events where both sides are telling the truth as they understood it in the moment, describing 2 slightly different points in time rather than the exact same instant. That possibility doesn't make the mystery go away. It just means contradiction between honest accounts doesn't automatically mean somebody's lying. Sometimes it means nobody was watching closely enough until it turned out to matter. If a case like this, one built almost entirely on competing memories instead of hard physical evidence, is the kind of story that keeps you thinking after the video ends, that's exactly why we do these breakdowns. Subscribe and let us know in the comments which account you find more convincing. So how do investigators actually work through something like this? Former Philadelphia and D.C. Police Chief Charles Ramsey, now a CNN law enforcement analyst, has laid out the standard approach. Interview every witness individually, one at a time, including everyone who was on that beach and the young woman Nolan was last seen with. The reasoning is simple. When people are interviewed together, or even just aware of what others in their group already said, their own account can shift, consciously or not, to match the group's version. Separate the witnesses, and investigators can compare independent memories of the same afternoon, looking specifically at where those memories naturally overlap and where they start to pull apart. In a case built on competing statements rather than hard physical evidence, that process isn't just procedure. Right now, it's arguably the single most useful tool investigators have. There's also a digital side to this. Deleted Snapchat content, missing messages, a phone that reached the family before police. All of that points to a forensic recovery process that specialized digital units can sometimes handle better than a small local department can on its own. That's part of why outside resources tend to get pulled into cases like this. Ramsey also made a broader point worth remembering. The pace of this investigation, in his professional experience, isn't actually unusual. Gathering complete evidence and conducting proper interviews commonly takes a week or longer. That's frustrating for a grieving family, but the timeline itself isn't evidence of anything being mishandled. By the second week of July, Sheriff Ledbetter confirmed his office had conducted formal witness interviews, dozens of them by his own count, and had been in direct contact with outside agencies, including the FBI. He said public tips had genuinely moved the investigation forward, calling the response productive. It's worth being precise about what that FBI contact does and doesn't mean. It's not a federal takeover. The FBI's Jackson field office later confirmed the Sheriff's Department remains the lead agency, describing its own role as support, digital forensics resources, cross-jurisdictional coordination, the kind of help smaller departments often bring in on complicated cases, not a sign the case has been taken out of local hands. Jackson County District Attorney Angel Myers McIlrath has also been coordinating with the Sheriff's Office, and Ledbetter has said the investigation will not be rushed. Separately, the FBI confirmed it's investigating threats made against people connected to this case, an effort running parallel to, but distinct from, the Jackson County investigation itself. Judge Cole's public statements haven't gone without consequence. A petition has circulated calling for her removal from the bench, arguing that a sitting judge publicly commenting on and defending her own son's role in an active death investigation raises real questions about judicial ethics. Whether that goes anywhere is now a matter for Mississippi's Commission on Judicial Performance to decide, not something we can resolve here. What we can say clearly, as of now, no one has been charged with anything in connection with Nolan's death. There is no named suspect. This remains an open, active investigation. Both autopsies are still pending. The independent examination in Washington, D.C. was originally expected around July 10th, but the family's team has said transportation delays pushed that back. The state's autopsy is waiting on toxicology results, which routinely take days to weeks since testing is handled by outside labs rather than processed in-house. None of that is unusual. Ramsey himself has said he's personally waited 2 to 3 weeks for toxicology results in cases with far less public attention attached to them. That wait has created space for misinformation, and it's worth naming directly. Multiple credible outlets have reported on how much false information has filled the silence around this case. If you see a claim online stating the autopsy results are already out, especially one describing dramatic new findings, treat it with real skepticism until it's confirmed by a named, credible source. That's not us being cautious for the sake of it. We've seen exactly that kind of unverified claim circulating already, dressed up to look far more authoritative than it actually is, and none of it holds up against what's actually been confirmed. One friend who was on that trip, speaking publicly to explain his own role after the confusion around the viral video, said he's simply waiting for the facts before forming any further opinion. If those facts show somebody harmed Nolan, he said he hopes justice is brought. If it turns out to have been a tragic accident, one where someone failed to speak up afterward, he said he hopes for justice there too. He didn't defend his friend group as a whole, and he didn't accuse anyone either. He just said, plainly, that he's lost his best friend, and he wants the truth more than he wants to be right about a theory. Christine Wansley hasn't slept much since her son went missing. She spent weeks in interviews going over Snapchat windows, phone records, and the exact minute a Coast Guard call was placed. But the memory she keeps returning to isn't analytical at all. It's her son in the doorway, telling her he loved her, the night before everything changed. "This was our baby boy," she said. "I birthed him." She and Elmore have asked, repeatedly, for the same thing. Not theories, just answers. At a recent press conference, she also asked something else of the public directly, that if people plan to protest, they do it peacefully, because that's who her son was. "He really didn't even like arguments," she said. "So let's just make sure we keep it peaceful and respectful to one another." Nolan's parents and their legal team met directly with District Attorney Angel Myers McIlrath on July 15th to go over where things stand. Funeral services have since been scheduled for July 20th at Center Point Church in Ocean Springs, with a separate gathering afterward that Christine has described as a homegoing celebration rather than a traditional mourning service. "He would not want us to be sitting around crying," she said. "So what we are going to do is kind of have a party to celebrate him." A GoFundMe organized by a family friend, Alea Dennis, has drawn more than 1,500 individual donations to help cover those costs. So here's where this actually stands. No charges, no named suspect, 2 autopsies still pending, a judge facing scrutiny for her own public statements, and a formal petition asking for her removal, a video that's been described but never fully explained, and a young woman whose account, relayed through her family, still doesn't line up with what the friends who left the island are saying. Every new development this case produces seems to add a layer instead of resolving one. We'll keep following this. The autopsy results, the witness interviews, whatever comes of the ethics complaint, and we'll bring you what's actually confirmed, not a moment before. If this case has your attention the way it has ours, subscribe so you're here for the next update. And tell us in the comments where you're watching from and what part of this story you think investigators still haven't cracked. See you next time.
To meet with District Attorney Angel McElgrath and some members of her team. We had a very respectful meeting. The thing I assume some of you may know, the thing to announce, she shared with the family that there will be a grand jury that she will turn this case over to once they have collected all the information and finished their investigation. We also agreed that we will have a mutual inspection of the cell phone with our experts and their experts. Attorney Eric Hertz is helping lead the investigation team with former law enforcement experts who are going to help us with the cell phone download. So everybody will be able to see at the same time what the cell phone has. We also talked about trying to make sure we dot every I and cross every T. I know that we're getting about 50 calls a day to 100 calls a day from people who were there on Horn Island, people who are familiar with individuals that were there on Horn Island. And so we continue to be steadfast in trying to get to the truth of why Nolan Wells is dead. At this time, we'll have Attorney Hertz say a few words, and then Christine and Elmore will just talk about the homegoing services and celebration for Nolan, and then we'll take a few of your questions. Attorney Eric Hertz.
Thank you. Right now, there's a lot of unanswered questions. We appreciate the district attorney meeting with us, but because of certain types of confidentiality that even the victims are not allowed to know, we did not get all the answers we want. We have an independent investigation going on that involves former law enforcement, federal agents that are going to be looking into all the different information we got. The calls are coming in and we're getting a lot of information. Some of the people that I spoke to are not talking with law enforcement here. We're going to be trying to get them to cooperate with each other because we want to make sure the narrative, which has been put out that is false, is going to be corrected. So at this point, we just ask everybody to keep calling in if you have any information and let us know. And I personally, if we validate you're a legitimate call, we'll call you and talk to you. And I thank you all for showing up today.
And now, Christine and Elmore will just share with you some details of the homegoing celebration for their son.
Hello everyone. So the homegoing celebration, the funeral will be held at Center Point Church in Ocean Springs. It is going to be, visitation will be 9 to 11, and then the funeral will start after that. The plan is for the repast because, again, we want to celebrate Nolan. And he would not want us to be sitting around crying and eating. And so what we're going to do is kind of have a party to celebrate him, and that'll be held at the Jackson County Fairgrounds. So we really do want to keep it for family and friends. We are going to allow media to come in as well. And lastly, I just...
His teammates.
Oh, absolutely, teammates. We've already contacted Coach Les George because we want to make sure that those guys are there. Former teammates from high school, middle school, teams that he played against. You guys are all welcome, but of course, we want to make sure that our families for sure and close friends get there. So I do want to just say for those of you, again, if you are having protests, even the day of his service, I am asking you guys to just keep it peaceful. Nolan would never want any type of violence or anything like that. He was not that kind of person. So if you guys would, again, just be peaceful. And to the community, thank you so much. Just the outpouring of love, support. We've had some local officials, Mayor Casey Vaughn from Gaucher has reached out to us. Oh my gosh, I can't even tell you. He has, it's almost been every day. He's been texting to check on us. Also, Jeffrey Hullum, thank you so much. He's been texting pretty much every day. Receiving a lot of stories from Nolan's teachers, which just warms my heart, his classmates, teammates. So again, for those of you who have donated to the GoFundMe, once again, I stress, if you are not financially able to, we're not begging for that money, okay? If you're not financially able to, we understand. We thank you for whatever you can give, but if you cannot, if you would, just keep us in your prayers. And to his friends, stay strong, and please just take care of your mental health, because I know this is a lot. It's a lot for us, and I know you guys are feeling some of that too. So thank you all.
Are there any questions? Yes.
Attorney Crump, Skyler Henry here with CBS News. The last time that you spoke in a setting like this, I know you guys were hoping to get results back from an independent autopsy. I know you mentioned that Nolan had been sent to
Washington, D.C.
Is there anything to share on that front?
Not at this time, but we hope soon, very soon. Obviously, we're concentrating on the funeral services, but hopefully shortly thereafter, we will be able to tell some findings of the preliminary autopsy. Still waiting on some things. And also, while we're talking about funeral services, want to thank Mr. Tyler Perry for paying for the funeral.
Absolutely.
As well as Colin Kaepernick for helping to shoulder the expense of the independent autopsy. And I thank Reverend Al for agreeing to officiate the funeral services. Yes, sir.
Aaron Gilchrist with NBC News. Mr. and Mrs. Wansley, you said from the very beginning that for you, this was really about getting some answers about what happened to your son. Do you feel like after your meeting today, you have any more clarity on what happened?
Well, it was just a meeting where she talked about the process. She didn't tell us any information about the investigation too much, because those things are, as she said, her role and what she has to do. But they still have questions, and that's not insignificant to this meeting. It's just in general. Every morning they wake up and there's a hole in their heart, and they are trying to say, what happened to my son? Obviously, they feel strongly that he would not have just stayed behind. He wouldn't have left his cell phone. And so we're trying to get to those answers.
Attorney Crump, Brian Rose, GC Wire. There's been a lot of misinformation that's been spread online, especially the pool picture that was shared by you, and you had said that...
Well, I didn't share it, I reposted it. We're reposting everything. Let's make it clear. We're reposting everything because we're trying to get people to come in and call. And so we've said from the beginning, we're in a ferocious search for the truth. And so things out there, we are trying to post, ask people, do you know something about this? Let us know. Just because we repost does not mean that we authenticate anything. look at our social media. We have always been very careful to say this is a repost, and we almost always give a declaration that that's what it is, a repost. And so we want people to continue to call about everything, videos, whatever interactions they saw, and thank God we are getting dozens of people calling every day saying, I was on Horn Island, this is what I saw, I know these individuals, this is what we know. They said, we understand the sheriff's investigation has hundreds of people calling too. And so the hope is that when this is presented to the grand jury, all relevant witnesses and evidence will be presented to them so that we can have a fair and impartial investigation into the death of Nolan Wells. We were very honest and candid with the district attorney, and she was honest and candid with us. Our lived experiences tell us that we must question everything, everybody's role, law enforcement role. That is the lived experience of us as black people in America. And we would be not honoring the ancestors' sacrifices for us if we did not be honest every chance we got when we talk to power. Yes, sir.
You mentioned the false narrative out there. Well, I've seen quite a few of those, so I was wondering if you could tell us which false narrative you're talking about so we can